My parents live with me because I bought their house when they were going to lose it. They were going to lose it because of all the money they spent keeping my brother out of jail and keeping him in rehab. My brother is clean and sober now, married with kids, religious. His father-in-law gave him a great job. He has never paid my parents back 1 cent. I got my degree. I just had to take on some debt to do it. I'm out of the hole and working hard to move up. I live in the basement suite with my girlfriend and my dog. I make good money, and my parents deserve a good life. They did what they thought was best. My brother had us all over to his house for a barbecue with his in-laws. It was a good meal, and his kids are all right for being his offspring. He then proceeded to mock me for still living at home, smoking, and playing video games while living in sin. I told him to shut up and leave me out of whatever was going on. He said he knew I could be doing so much better if I applied myself and looked for guidance. I thanked him for the meal, and my girlfriend and I left. He yelled that he was telling me what I needed to hear to motivate me. I got upset, so I said I was motivated. I said that I liked to smoke and to drink, but I paid for it myself with the money I earned from a job. I never stole from our parents to pay for sugar. I said that I lived in the basement of a house I owned because I couldn't afford 2 houses, one for me and one for our parents, and that since they went into debt to pay for his lawyers and rehab, I was subsidizing his life. I said that my college fund went up his nose. I may be bitter. We left. I guess his wife, who knew everything, had never told her parents, and they were angry. My parents understand why I blew my top off, but they think I should have kept it in until it was only family there, and I'm an idiot for not talking to him privately about his hypocrisy. Am I the idiot for outing my brother to his in-laws and kids? It was nice of you to refresh your brother's memory, since he basically insisted on you doing so. His past would have stayed there if he hadn't decided to call you out for taking care of the mess he made. Seriously, what did he possibly expect to gain by needling you? You are not the idiot. Your brother is a condescending, hypocritical idiot. He knows exactly why you're living in the basement. Because of him. Was he trying to look good in front of his in-laws? He obviously doesn't understand that calling you out in front of them, even if what he said had been true, would have been an idiot move. But even more, expecting you to take it after everything he's done was not going to happen. The in-laws are his family, and they have a right to know the kind of person who will be raising their grandkids. Your brother needs to drop his high and mighty act, and your parents need to put him on a plan to pay them and in turn you back. You stunted your life because your brother messed up everyone else's, and every party, you, your brother, and your parents, needs to come together and have that talk. Since he's doing so well now, he can start providing for those who provided this life for him. It is despicable that you got your parents out of a hole, lost your college fund, have to work twice as hard to build up with your partner, that he hasn't paid a cent back to your parents, and relied on his father-in-law for a job, yet shows fake concern for you? He is purposefully putting you down. I'm glad his in-laws and children now know the truth about him, because he's no one to talk. He should also be contributing to the care of your parents. I hope the whole burden doesn't fall on you. People need a smack of reality sometimes, and never feel bad for having to be that person. We're both in our mid-20s. My partner's studying further while working and had an exam that started at 8 a.m. Last night, they asked me to wake them up at 6 a.m., and I promptly set my alarm for 6 a.m. It's usually set to 6:15, as that's when I wake up for work. At 5 a.m., our cat scratched at the bedroom door to be let out, so we both woke for a few seconds. By the time I woke up and got back to bed, they had already fallen back asleep. At 6 a.m. this morning, the alarm went off as normal, and I shook them awake. Their eyes opened and they shifted in bed. I thought they were awake, and as such, I went back to sleep for a few minutes. At around 6:25, I woke up naturally and checked my phone to see the time. Realizing they were late, I exclaimed, "Wake up! It's 6:30. I rounded up. They promptly woke up and started getting ready, as did I, to make coffee and breakfast for them. When they were done getting ready, we had an argument where they were super angry at the fact that I didn't wake them up on time, I responded in anger, stating that I woke them up at 6, but they fell asleep. Their response was that that wasn't waking someone up, and that they weren't up and neither was I. Furthermore, their argument is also that they don't remember being woken up at 6, only at 5 when there was a noise. They had also angrily mentioned that if they missed the exam, who'll take another day off work to write the exam, as they already took weeks off work for studying. I can understand their anger that they entrusted me to wake them up at 6 a.m., and as such, being woken up nearly a half hour later would be infuriating. But I believe they have no grounds to be angry, as they didn't wake up when they needed to. Furthermore, they didn't take any responsibility to set their own alarms. Am I the idiot here? Not the idiot. As a grown darn adult, your partner needs to be responsible for waking themselves up. From now on, when they ask, just say no. If they get mad at you, say, "Clearly, I'm not good at waking you up, so you should do it yourself." Understandably, they were stressed about their exam, but that stress doesn't justify blaming you for their own oversight. Moving forward, it might be helpful to discuss setting multiple alarms or finding a more reliable method to wake up for important events. This can help prevent similar situations in the future and ensure that both of you are on the same page regarding morning routines and responsibilities. Moving forward, OP should just tell their partner to take some responsibility and let them deal with it by themselves. I sure as heck wouldn't be helping them anymore after getting treated that way. Like heck no, go point your finger somewhere else. You're not your partner's mom, and they're the ones who went back to sleep. Your partner needs to take responsibility for getting their own grown butt out of bed. I have a son who is now a young teen from my first marriage. My first wife died when he was 5, and I remarried when he was 7. My wife and I met several months after I lost my wife. We didn't enter a romantic relationship until 16 months after my first wife's passing. However, I know that from starting a romantic relationship to remarrying, we moved fast. I know it was too fast for my son, who was young at the time and struggled with the change. I did have him in therapy, and our relationship didn't suffer because of it. He never stopped confiding in me and talking to me, but his relationship with my wife did suffer as a result. He's not close to her, and he's not close to his half-siblings. We've done family therapy, and my son had therapy to help him with the loss of his mom, and more recently, to help him as he deals with my diagnosis. This all comes into play because I'm terminally ill, and my son wants to live with my late wife's father, brother, and family once I'm gone. He has expressed this to me since the topic of what happens next became a reality we need to prepare for. My wife doesn't want my son to leave her and the kids after I die. I know my 2 daughters will miss my son a lot since they're old enough, a kindergartner and a young grammar schooler, to remember him. My son told me that he wouldn't be happy staying with my wife and other children. He told me he'd rather be with his real family. My wife is aware of the conversation my son and I are having over this topic. She spoke on behalf of herself and our kids. She believes I should tell my son he should stay with them since this is his home, and she thinks it would spell the ends of any sibling relationship if he can get away with never seeing our kids. She believes he could grow more fond of them in time. I spoke to my late wife's family, who would gladly have my son. They see him regularly as it is, and have always been a part of his life. I trust that they'll take fantastic care of my son, but I also believe my wife would. I believe my son would be happier with his maternal family. I told my wife this, and she said she thought I would want my kids to be close after I'm gone. She thought I respected her as an equal parent in our household, and that I would consider more than just what my oldest son wants. She asked me to really think if it would be best for him. I told her I had been thinking about that. She became angry and we fought about it. I hate fighting with her when I don't have long left. She told me I was showing a lack of concern or care for her and the kids and accused me of being cold. Am I the idiot if I prioritize what my son wants and arrange for him to stay with his maternal family after I die? Not the idiot. Your son is old enough to have a say in where he lives. It's a real possibility that he'll get resentful if you or your wife forces him to keep living there when he doesn't want to. Your wife seems to be looking after her children, not all of the children. She wants her stepson around for how he can help her. She admits what her priorities are. Your son is not your wife's and daughter's emotional support animal. It's not his job to make them feel better or more connected as a family after you're gone. He's going through the heartbreak of losing both his parents before he finishes school, and he's old enough to make this decision for himself. Your wife doesn't get a say in this. She's not his mother, and he doesn't consider her family. You would be the idiot if you allowed her to say your decision. My boyfriend, 31, and I, 29 female, have been together for 7 years now. I had voiced that I wanted to be engaged before the 4-year mark. He agreed at the time. When we were half a year from reaching our 4th anniversary, I revisited the topic of marriage and told him I was expecting to get married. He was finishing up his master's program then and said he wanted to get out of student debt again and get his finances in order. I bit my tongue and understood that we were partners and I could try to meet him halfway. He earns good money and we already moved in together 2 years into our relationship and did long distance when he was in his master's program. My job is remote, so I moved into his hometown, 3 hours away from the OG. I've been seeing all my friends and cousins get married, and it's hard to feel happy on such a joyous occasion when your ring finger feels so empty and everyone starts asking you. Lately, my partner's been thriving at work and enjoying his new life, and it's almost as if he forgot about our personal goals. When I initiated a discussion again, I could sense he was dragging his feet. He didn't have enough money for a ring or savings for a wedding. When would he buy the motorbike he always wanted since he was a kid? He said our life was good, as is. Why do we need a stamp of validation from the world? You're on your own health insurance, so what's the point? All of this just left me heartbroken. Why don't I deserve to be his wife after being his girlfriend for so long? Does he not love me enough to make a romantic gesture for me? Choosing me over his useless bike? I talked to my sister, who got engaged 2 years into her relationship, and her approach was simple yet effective. She told me to withdraw all my wife privileges from him until I get that title that he has to earn me, not cleaning and cooking for him, moving out, not paying for his expenses sometimes, stuff like that. My boyfriend got mad because I didn't renew our lease with him and told me that's a very poor way of handling things and that we need this constant in our life to preserve that intimacy, telling me that's the kind of precedent I'm setting up for our eventual marriage. I've been a wife for you without the title. I gave myself completely to you, expecting you to do this one thing for me. I've waited long enough. I don't believe in ultimatums, so I'm not going to force your hand. I'm acting as your girlfriend now. If you really want our relationship to return to what it was, you better upgrade me. Am I the idiot? Edit. In our culture, in hetero relationships, a woman making comments about being ready to marry and wanting to get engaged is her proposal. Then it's up to the man to either accept by proposing formally or decline by not proposing. And at that stage, the woman proposing is embarrassing herself by doing it, to be honest. So by your own logic, you've proposed to him twice, and he's rejected your proposal. Unfortunately, I think it's pretty clear he doesn't want to get married, and if that's a deal breaker for you, I think it's best to part ways. I know this is hard to hear and easier said than done, but you will get through it, and you'll be okay. You're not the idiot for wanting to get married. You are the idiot for attempting to manipulate him into a marriage he doesn't want. Why would any woman want to marry a man that they had to nag, threaten, and manipulate to marry them? No woman with any self-respect. Girl, he doesn't want to marry you, and forcing him to do it will screw you both over. Trying to force a man to marry you makes you the idiot. Why would you want to make a lifelong commitment to someone who doesn't want to be committed to you? Don't fall for the sunk cost fallacy. You've wasted enough time on someone uninterested in marrying you. I, female 34, own a very small shop selling trinkets, and I normally run this daily by myself. The other day, a customer with a guide dog wanted to browse. I could clearly tell it was definitely a guide dog. However, I have a severe allergy to dogs, and on top of that, have asthma. When I was younger, an allergic reaction to a dog triggered an asthma attack, so now I'm very wary of being in closed spaces with dogs. That's why when I saw this customer, I asked if it would be okay for the dog to remain outside, but I could possibly leave the door open. That was when the customer started shouting at me and calling me names, saying I was discriminating against them. The customer said it's a guide dog that has to be with them at all times, and it's against the law for me to not allow the dog to enter. I offered for her to come another day, where I could get my friend to cover the time she'd be in the store, and then get everything deep cleaned after. But the customer wasn't okay with that, since they wanted to browse right now. Throughout this conversation, I could already feel slight symptoms coming on, such as itchy eyes, nose, and throat. The customer shouted at me for a while, which people passing could hear, but no one intervened or helped. Eventually, I just had to shut and lock the door so they couldn't enter, and I closed up for the day. They've now left a horrific review on my store, saying that I discriminate against those with a disability. Should I have just sucked it up and let them into my shop? Edit for info. I politely explained to the customer my allergies and how severe they could get, but the customer didn't seem to care. I have doctor's notes, etc. for my allergy, as I'm on daily medication, but the customer didn't give me any chance to explain and showed constant aggression. When I say I suck it up, I don't mean just bear with the slight discomfort. I mean maybe I should have let the customer and dog in, hoping that my reaction wouldn't be life-threatening. Of course, I wouldn't know what could happen. I have an air purifier and I'm on medication daily to avoid the situation. I also deep clean very regularly. Not the idiot. There were 2 legitimate medical concerns. You can't leave your lungs at home, but she can come back another day. Their need for accommodation for a medical condition does not supersede your own need for accommodation of a medical condition. You should look up the law around it, but personally, I post on the door, service animals only, permitted legally by appointment, only due to severe allergic reaction by owner, will cause anaphylaxis. That way you're not denying entry, simply putting it up front in writing that they can come after they make the appointment to do so. How would a blind person read the sign on your door to make an appointment? That said, OP needs to consult a lawyer specializing in ADA and business matters before putting up any signage. That's fair, but then I pose the question, how can a blind person window shop? OP's dog allergy causes them physical harm and could be potentially life-threatening. The customer was not physically harmed by not being able to shop there. The shop sells souvenirs and trinkets, not necessities. OP was right to refuse them entrance. The entitlement of people who think their problems are always worse than others.